We are grateful to our friends at AMISA for this opportunity to share with you some insights about how we can accelerate school improvement through action research and to share a little bit about the MLRC. My name is Jon Nordmeyer, and I'm the School Network Director at the MLRC. Happy to be joined by my colleague.
Hi, everyone. My name is Esther Bettney Heidt, and I am MLRC School Network Researcher, and I have the privilege of living in the AMISA region. So I live in Medellin, Colombia, hence why Jon and I always have very different wardrobe choices because it's a little bit warmer here than in Vermont, where Jon is. And I've been in the AMISA region since 2006. So really happy to be here. We have a really strong representation across the AMISA region. So really glad to have you here today and look forward to digging in.
Thanks, Esther. Yes, I was up at 5 a.m. snow blowing our driveway this morning, so wish I could send you all that free air conditioning to those of you in warmer places. We're also joined by our colleague, Sarah Ferrier, who is the coordinator at the MLRC School Network, and Sarah will answer lots of questions in the chat and also drop some helpful links and follow up in emails. So today we've got a couple points that we wanted to cover and share with you, thinking about what is the MLRC for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the Multilingual Learning Research Center, and then thinking about how we can bridge research and practice to support multilingual learners and support school improvement at your school, and maybe how your school might get involved. So we'd love to hear from you. If you could introduce yourself in the chat. We know many of you, maybe you don't know each other. Love to hear your school and your role at the school, and then maybe just one way research is used at your school. So we'll give you a minute or so to think about that and drop something in the chat. Great. Well, it's nice to see folks from around the region and different types of schools, some MLRC member schools and schools in AMISA and outside the AMISA region. So continue thinking about how you frame research in your school and some ways that maybe what we share could be applied at your school. So welcome again, and please feel free to jump in if you've got questions. We're going to start with just a little bit of background about the MLRC for those of you who may be unfamiliar with our center. We're fortunate to be located in, as part of the School of Education in the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And we're proud that we just received in the U.S. News and World Report 2024 ranking, the #1 School of Education, tied with Teachers College at Columbia. And there's really a long history of innovation and thought leadership. You may be familiar with folks like Michael Apple or Gloria Ladson, Billings, James G. are all former UW-Madison colleagues. And there's this notion of the Wisconsin idea, which really is that the work, the research at the University of Wisconsin benefits those in the university community, but also across the US and around the world. And that's the Wisconsin idea, that the knowledge and solutions are really both local and global. So we created the MLRC just over a year ago to really reimagine how schools connect with each other, how we can focus on social justice and innovation to study the teaching of multilingual learners and collaborate and research through a research practice partnership. And we are excited that there are over 200 schools that are part of the school network in more than 60 countries. And you'll see here some of them from across the AMISA region. And we're really grateful for these schools for their commitment to equity for multilingual learners and also innovation in using research. So we have been talking about multilingual learners, so just a moment to think about terminology. We have, in the past used different terms to refer to students who are fortunate enough to come to our schools speaking more than one language. And previous laws in the US and other countries referred to students as limited English proficient, which is really a deficit-based approach. And we know that English learners is a better term, but it still focuses on what students don't yet have and that they're in the process of becoming, they're not yet enough. So multilingual learners recognizes that students are multilingual and they are learners. And we think that's really important framing for the asset-based equity work that we do. We're a research center, so we think a lot about research, and we want to share with you some reasons why in a recent study, practicing teachers and school leaders don't use research. Only a third of teachers in this Monash University study said that they regularly engage with research. And some of the reasons they gave for that gap between research and practice is that research is either not accessible, not relevant, or that researchers who are doing the research are disconnected from classrooms. So we designed the MLRC School Network as a research practice partnership to help us really connect research to practice. And we do that in a number of ways. We help you as practitioners, as school leaders, understand what are the current research insights. What do we know about teaching multilingual learners? Also, school network members have access to the entire UW-Madison library collection. And I know there's nothing more annoying than finding a great article you want to read and you click on it and all you get is the abstract because it's behind a paywall. So we want to democratize the access to research. We provide opportunities to collaborate in studies, and we'll share a little bit more about that. We are launching a program review, an audit program, to be able to provide formative feedback on your program serving multilingual learners. We connect schools with global scholars. Together, we co-design, co-write, and co-present research. And we're going to share with you some of the research that has been co-developed and published with some partner schools. And we do that by training schools to engage in action research. And this is a really important lever for school improvement. So I wanted to share with you, these are kind of the components of the school network as a research practice partnership. We designed it this way because we think this can really impact teacher learning. And what we know that teachers in classrooms are engaged in all the time are engaging with research. You want to know what we know about your subject, and then refining the mental models. What do you see in your classroom, and how do you see learning in your school? And then you use those mental models to evaluate current practices. You decide to make changes based on those mental models, and then you implement those changes and gather evidence about how that impacts multilingual learners. And we believe that that will help teachers by engaging in that cycle of teacher learning. It helps teachers develop self-efficacy, both about research and your pedagogy. And we know that that has an impact on multilingual learners, that it will help our multilingual learners develop subject matter competence, language competence, and multilingual self-efficacy. So that's thinking about teacher learning. Why do we engage in research activities to support teacher learning? And hopefully some of that feels familiar to you. We also know that school leaders are engaging continually in school improvement. And so by helping school leadership teams understand what makes an effective program for multilingual learners, what do effective teaching practices look like? How do we use research evidence and use research to inform policy and program development? That helps school leaders to support school improvement. So leadership teams can look at the data you have about your program, implement changes, monitor the impact, and then develop a school-wide vision for serving multilingual learners. We think research is a really core, important part of that, and we're going to share with you some schools talking about how both this teacher learning and school improvement have been outcomes of their action research. So that's a lot about a research practice partnership, why we've designed it this way. And Esther is going to take us into the weeds a little bit about some of the topics and some of the tools we use to support teachers in doing this work.
Sure. Thank you, Jon. As Jon's talking about the research practice partnership and how we serve multilingual learners, we had to identify some focus areas because we know there are so many different aspects of teaching that we could look at. And so we engaged in a process of analyzing what were some of the questions that international schools and international teachers were asking fairly regularly about how to best serve their multilingual learners. And so through an analytic process, we identified 3 research focus areas that we are working on as we engage in this action research together. So the first one is teacher collaboration. So thinking about how teachers collaborate, and depending on your program model, that might be between an EAL teacher and a classroom specialist, or we know within the context of AMISA schools, that might be across your language program. So for example, across how an English teacher and a Spanish teacher might collaborate together. So that's our first research focus area. Our second one is translanguaging. And we think of this as multilingualism for learning. So thinking about what are the linguistic repertoires that students bring to the classroom and how can those be used as learning resources? And then how can, as teachers, we support students in developing their languages across instructional languages. And so again, we know within AMISA, we have the real privilege of often having more than one instructional language. So translanguaging as really key as we think about the connections across instructional languages and also with other home languages that students bring into the classroom. And our third focus area is inclusive EAL, and this refers to the intersection of multilingualism and neurodiversity. So how can we intentionally support the needs of multilingual students who may also be identified with some type of learning exceptionality? So those are the 3 areas I have identified and have been working together with our partner schools in looking at the research and also developing action research projects to investigate those within each school context. So we just want to share some of the ways that we've been engaged in this work. And so on the right-hand side there, you'll see some of the ways that we have developed some opportunities for members to engage across these 3 research topics. And so, Jon, if you want to go to the next slide, I'll show or talk about where this engagement happens. And so if you're at a MLRC member school, then all faculty at your school can have access to the MLRC School Network Hub. And so when we're talking about engagement with the research topics, this is really a primary place in which that happens. Within each research topic, we have developed a variety of resources, such as a research summary, annotated bibliographies. Just this past semester, we've developed research-informed workshops for each of the research topics. And those are designed to allow you as experts and leaders around multilingual learning in your schools to really take those workshops and adapt them to your particular school context. So we provide slides, we provide the handouts, we provide the facilitator guideline, but it's really designed so you can adapt it to your particular context. We also, for schools who use WIDA assessments, have a number of resources there, including the WIDA Virtual Institute that can support you in making that connection between testing and teaching. And finally, action research tools. And that's really where we're going to be focused today, is looking at how action research can support school improvement. But we wanted to make sure to take the opportunity to highlight what other resources across these research topics are available in the hub. And as Jon said, our colleague Sarah is here today. So if you have any questions around how to get access to the hub for your colleagues, Sarah's the person to help with that. Great. So as I said, today we're going to really dig into and focus on action research. And some of you might be familiar with it. Some already put in the chat that you have engaged in it in your school context. But we really want to highlight that action research is by educators and for educators. So it really is you identifying a problem of practice within your particular context that you want to address. And the idea is that it leads to some type of action plan. So it's not you're engaging in action research just to be informed about the problem of practice, but that it really leads to the opportunity for you to have some specific steps that you can take that have come out of the research that you have conducted. So we just want to take a moment as we're starting to talk about action research to think about if you were going to identify a question that you have related to multilingual learners, what comes to mind? Sometimes we use this hand, heart, head framework to think about it of what is the thing that you're trying to solve. So if you have a problem of practice or a question about multilingual learners, what is it that you're trying to solve? And second, why do you care about it? Of all of the questions that you could be trying to address, why do you care about this question in particular? And finally, what do you need to know about it? So what is the missing piece? What is the information, the research that you need to conduct? So we'll just take a moment. If you want to think about a question or a topic related to multilingual learners and see if you can answer those questions, or you might pick one of the questions that you want to comment on in the chat. Well, we'll just take a moment to respond in the chat. What is a professional question or topic that matters to you? Right, we're waiting for our first brave soul who has a question or a topic that they've been thinking about related to multilingual learners. Terrific. Thank you, Vicki. So UDL for multilingual learners, terrific. We know there's a lot of talk and work right now around UDL in the context of international schools, but what does that mean in particular for multilingual learners, and how to be proactively planning and supporting best practices, research to support it, et cetera. Terrific. Thank you, Vicki. And I'm not going to put you on the spot, Vicki, but I'm sure you could tell us why you care about it and what you need to know about it as well. You're welcome to unmute and share, but I don't want to put you on the spot. But we know these questions, there's a reason that you care about it. All right.
And anyone else, be brave and generous in sharing what's on your mind.
Takes
yes.
a long time to type some of the context. That's all.
Thank you, Matt, MLRC friend in Atlanta. Great to have you here. And so Matt has a multilingual school with dual language, AB for English, paired with Spanish, German, or French, and a language acquisition program of English with Mandarin Chinese. It's complex. Matt has explained to us before, and I'm like, okay, tell me that one more time. I just got to get my head around how this all works. So what is the best approach to maximize the effectiveness of our dual language models to support language and content learning? Terrific. So again, Matt's identifying what is the problem that he's trying to solve and what do they need to know. So it sounds like may need to gather some more data around each of those programs and student achievement in those programs. Terrific. Lots of great questions. You're right, Matt. It takes a little bit to type, so we have to be patient. Lots of terrific questions coming in. So thank you for sharing them. Some of you might, I know Karina, I'm not going to put you on the spot either, Karina, but Karina's been joining us for our monthly action research hours, where we went through a process of identifying a problem and how we would write it as a research question. And so we have here the first step of that, which is identifying what is a problem that you care about and why do you care about it? And then what comes next is thinking about why it matters.
Sorry about that, Esther, for jumping ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for those of you who have shared or you're thinking about something. at your school. And we found that the focus, I just want to add, it can be a problem you're trying to solve, something that really vexes you, that's a thorny, pernicious challenge. It can also be something that you're really excited about, that's going really well at your school, and you want to put the magic under the microscope to figure out what makes it work. So maybe you can scale it up and take it from elementary school to middle and high school, or maybe you can share it with other schools at a conference or by writing a paper about it. So we've seen schools do both, study something that's a problem of practice, but also study something that's an innovation they want to share or scale. Thanks, Esther.
Perfect. Thank you, John. And we want to come back to what we know is true about some of the challenges of engaging in research. We know it's not that teachers aren't interested. We know it's not that teachers don't think it's important. But as we'll see here, we talked about before, there are barriers that need to be addressed for teachers to be able to engage in action research. And so we've been actively thinking about how can we address some of these barriers. And so one is teachers need tools. Just like we provide our students with tools, teachers need tools to engage in action research. It's not enough just to say, oh yeah, there's a question, why don't you go and figure that out, right? We need to have the tools so that we can engage effectively in action research. That's one of the things that we have been developing both through the research symposium and the hub, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Secondly, we know that teachers need support. They need support both from each other in times like this and when we have an opportunity to share with other teachers at other schools. And they also need support from others who have engaged in action research and who have engaged in different types of research studies. So part of how we've designed the action research pathway is so that you have the opportunity to identify your research problem and develop an action research plan. And then we provide support in the months following that, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And finally, expertise. I know, speaking from my own experience, that when I trained to be a teacher, I'm sure someone mentioned something about education research at some point in those 5 years, but it was not the particular focus. The focus was on how to make sure that I was ready to go into a classroom and to teach. And so that we know that teachers have a really wide range of expertise with action research. This is growing as people engage in different types of graduate work, but there's really a need to continue to develop capacity and skills so that you can engage effectively in action research, particularly in the limited time that we know that teachers have. The other area of expertise, as John mentioned in the chat, is also expertise across a particular research topic. So if you think about the topics that you put in the chat, you probably put them there because you already have some expertise in that area, but you want to further your expertise. So you want to dig into what research already exists around translanguaging, and then you want to think about, in your particular context, how you can study it. So by really addressing these barriers, we're hoping to support teachers in moving forward. So we're going to just talk about kind of what that pathway looks like. We know some of you are already signed up to join us at some of our research symposia coming up, but the research symposium is a 2-day in-person opportunity to learn about research on teaching multilingual learners. So we have two kind of parallel goals. One is the learning about the research, so research that already exists and digging into that. And then the second is to learn about the process of doing research. And so that happens, we just had our first in Vietnam, and we have a couple more coming up, but that happens first together in person at the research symposium. And then the 4 months following the research symposium, we provide support for schools as they engage in their action research back at their school. So you design your action research project at the research symposium, and then you return to your school and engage in it. And we provide support, both through the member hub and also through meetups as well. And also you'll see the nice little cloud bubble there that also mentions this year something that's new is that we have 3 action research coaches that will be available for schools who are looking for some more intensive and individualized support. Great. So we've been talking a lot about action research, but we know what's most powerful is to hear from people who have actually engaged in action research. So we asked some of our members from last year, and this wasn't intentional, I promise, but they all happen to be from the AMISA region. So you're going to hear from people you might know and definitely at schools that you're familiar with. We asked them to reflect on these 3 questions, which you can see, and we're going to share their stories so you can hear a little bit more about why they engaged in action research and the impact that it has had. So John, if you want to share the first, they're very short clips of people sharing about their stories.
Our question that we developed through the symposium was, how does intentional collaboration about multilingual language strategies between content teachers and our DSS, Department of Student Services teachers, impact collective teacher efficacy? I know that sounds like a lot, but really it's how do we have that intentional collaboration time, and how does that impact when we actually make time for them?
Our research question, or the problem of practice that we explored, was how are translanguage teaching pedagogies and students' practices occurring across secondary 6-12 classrooms at Colegio Americano de Guatemala?
Terrific. Thank you, John. So as you heard them talk about their research topics and why they picked their research topics, what did you hear? Why did these topics matter to them? You're welcome to add that in the chat, or you're also welcome to unmute if you would like.
Let's say you needed someone to repeat the question to make sure that they answered it correctly. Should that have been the case for anyone?
In the case if anyone was distracted. So as you were listening to them talk about the research question and why they picked it, what did you hear about the topic? So whether it was collaboration, translanguaging, and inclusive EAL, what did you hear them say? Why they picked those topics, or why those topics mattered to them? And John, if you want, I think we have some time. If you want to go back, since that was our first one, and replay, I think it should replay for us. John, I think it replayed, but not with sound.
How's that?
Let's see.
Our question that we developed through the symposium was, how does intentional collaboration about multilingual language strategies between content teachers and our DSS, Department of Student Services teachers, impact collective teacher efficacy? I know that sounds like a lot, but really it's how do we have that intentional collaboration time, and how does that impact when we actually make time for them?
Our research question, or the problem of practice that we explored, was how are translanguage teaching pedagogies and students' practices occurring across secondary 6-12 classrooms at Colegio Americano de Guatemala?
So feel free if you have some thoughts about what you heard about, in this case, they talked about collaboration and translanguaging. One of the things, and I've heard these videos so many times, it's funny how different things occur to you, is I realized they're talking about another type of teacher collaboration. In this case, they were talking about collaboration between classroom teachers and they call it just Department of Student Services, but learning support. So when we're thinking about collaboration, one of the things I heard about the research topic is just how many different types of teacher collaboration we could be looking at. So we're going to watch the second video. And in the second video, which the question that we're going to ask you to reflect on is, what did you hear about research practice connections? So as you listen to the video, what did you hear about that connection between research and practice?
Sorry about that, Esther.
That's fine. Thanks, John.
So connections between research and practice we're listening for. I got it.
One of the things that we needed to do to move forward with what we had learned was to advocate for time. And so our team proposed to our leadership team that we have intentional collaboration time every week for this school year, 24-25, for our teachers to be able to work together to focus on our students and their needs.
A first step is just creating time for collaboration, and in creating this time, also structuring it in a way that provides really productive conversations and then actionable outcomes.
We created this checklist that we use to do observations in a variety of classrooms to sort of make note of when and how often we saw these different strategies. After that, we also sent out a survey to teachers to sort of get an idea of what was their perceived use of these strategies.
And when you go back to teacher efficacy, we can already see a month into the school year that it is really impacting teams and they're working together. Our English as an additional language teachers are involved in these collaboration meetings. Our learning assistants who work directly with teachers and our learning support team is also involved in these meetings. So it's building that team effort to support the needs of all of our students.
So the action step we can take from this information is supporting our teachers, understanding how they can start implementing these. It can be a big project to implement translanguage strategies in every lesson, but we want to provide them with 4 simple basic steps that they can start with implementing this.
Great. So we'll take a minute to think about what was the connection they described between the research that they read, the research they engaged in, and how that actually impacted practice within their school context.
Esther, I will add an observation that maybe to jumpstart that I heard one of the teachers talk about the efficacy and sort of the confidence to be able to advocate for a practice based on some data, both data they had gathered and then insights from professional literature. So that efficacy to sort of know how to advocate and have the confidence and the competence to be able to ask for something and back up that request was one of the connections that I heard between the research and practice.
Yeah, and thank you, Megan. This is the one I was talking about, or I was thinking about, the importance of advocating for time to actually begin deepening collaboration. So like, it's great. We read all this wonderful research about collaboration and why it's so important and the impact on students. But there's a very practical piece of that is if we don't have time, then we can't actually do it. And so that like very direct connection, like research says this, and practically we need time to be able to do it. Vicki, thanks for sharing as well. So some intentionality around who was around the table and what they were speaking about. And so we heard that in a few of the different videos of saying like, okay, who needs to be part of this conversation as we're beginning our action research? And then also as we have these findings, who are we going to be engaging in conversations with? So while in each of these cases, there was a small team who was most actively engaged in the action research project, there was a much larger context for people involved throughout that process that was really important. Terrific. Okay, we have one last short video, and the prompt we want you to think about as you listen to this video is, what did you hear about the MLRC Research Symposium? And so that might be insights that come out of it for you from the video, and it also might be questions. So someone shares something, and you're like, oh, okay, here's a question I have about the research symposium. So John will share our last short video, and you can be thinking about, what did you hear as you watch about the research symposium?
I would highly recommend it. I think you need to be ready for it. And even if you don't know exactly what you're going for, I think you do need to be ready to do some work. One, at the symposium, but two, when you get back to your school.
We would highly recommend the symposium for other teams as they learn more about the process of research, about being able to have measurable goals for research, and just connecting with other teams around the world. That's not something we often get to do. And so it opens up our focus, not just for what's happening at our school, but trends and tendencies around the world in international schools and what research is available to us.
We recommend it because as a result, we are able to better support our students, our teachers, and really get a more accurate idea of what's actually going on in our institution and how we can learn and grow or share with other people.
Yeah, something we valued about that was the connection with other international schools and learning from them and where they are and where we are, so we can just help each other. It was a nice process.
Terrific. So there's our last video and our last prompt. What did you hear about the MLRC Research Symposium? And related to that, if you have any questions, and you're welcome to put those in the chat as well. And we know some of you are going to be joining us, so it might have led you to some more questions about what we'll be engaging in together in the next few months. Yeah, terrific. So both Megan and Vicky mentioned the same thing about this idea of connecting with other schools. And I think that is a really powerful part. John and I were just in Vietnam. There were 85 teachers and 28 schools or something represented. And it was so interesting to hear those conversations of, oh, that's happening at your school? Okay, here's what's happening at my school, and being able to share as they develop their action research projects. Definitely a really powerful piece of it. Okay, we'll start to now transition to be hearing a little bit more from one specific story about how action research has impacted at their school. I'll turn it back over to John.
Thanks, Esther. And so hopefully you have a sense when we talk about the research practice partnership where we started and how we've really deliberately built some research activities to bridge this research to practice gap, how action research is a powerful process and a set of tools. We shared with you our theories of action at the beginning of the webinar, thinking about teacher learning and school improvement. And so I want to share with you another story, and this is from a school in the Irkutsk region, the International School of Beijing, and they're going to share a little bit about how these outcomes that we have designed in looked at their school. So just as a reminder, one of the impacts that we intended to design for is thinking about school improvement, supporting leadership teams to know what good looks like, to understand some insights from the literature so they can engage in continuous improvement. And we know that in international schools, they're busy places. We have a lot of initiatives going on. So hopefully what this does is it builds some coherence because we study what we're doing and we connect it to other processes like accreditation that are already in place and help us to know what we know about our own continuous improvement with some authority and to have some evidence. So here is Ying Chu talking about her experience.
ISB has created our own program transformation framework. Of course, participating and implementing a large-scale action research is only one part of the puzzle. And our transformation framework is also a leadership development framework too. Coincidentally, everything the MLRC has synthesized actually falls into part of our program transformation framework. So I have reorganized, put them into two categories under our program transformation framework. The first one is ISB believes that we need to apply research to practice to ensure an evidence-based approach. So perfectly, the MLRC's analyzing internal and external research evidences falls under this category. The other component of the ISB's transformation framework is change management and leadership development are integrated. And the other four factors synthesized by the MLRC falls perfectly into this category. Those are define the vision, implement change, monitor impact, and evaluate impact. That is to say, the leadership implication for effecting a action research is actually a change management process too. And regardless of what change management model you use, we need to ensure that this is evidence-based approach. And strong leadership goes hand in hand with this disciplined research process.
Okay, sorry, the audio is a little quiet on that video. Hopefully you were able to see how and hear how the transformation of the dual language program at the International School of Beijing was framed by and supported by the action research that Ying Chu did with her school. And we've got one more connection to IS Beijing, and the video, hopefully we can turn up the volume a little. It connects to this second designed impact around teacher learning. And we shared with you that this cycle that teachers and teams are engaged in all the time helps to support team building, especially teams who attend a research symposium across grade levels, across expertise areas, with administrators. That team coheres around a common goal, and then that collective efficacy that a number of teams have mentioned. So I'm going to share with you one more short video from Dr. Chu about what this looked like at the International School of Beijing.
And lastly, those are the insights we have gained through this action research process as a team. Those are, we need to have a shared purpose, identity, values, and beliefs. And we all have this unwavering commitment to team building. We're shaping and reshaping, and our team identity evolved throughout the process. And we know that in order to build collective capability, we need to do that through public learning and reflection. And the last one is also the most important one is we can enhance collective resilience through increasing tolerance of ambiguity and uncertainty, through job-embedded learning and leading and leading the change together as a team. Thank you.
So again, I hope you were able to hear that and see that. It sounds like maybe Esther said she's having a problem seeing the slides. Can you see the slides?
John, I'm sharing my slides. So I think right now are my slides and your audio, which is fine as
Great.
long as everyone can see it.
Great. And again, we have the recording, and we're happy to share some of those videos if you weren't able to hear them, essentially talking about what this looked like at the International School of Beijing and how both the school improvement and the teacher learning were grounded in their action research. So we've shared with you a lot about this focus on action research, and Esther unpacked that for us. We had some testimonials for schools in the AMISA region. Broadening it out to think more about the other activities across the research practice partnership, just take a moment to think about the kinds of school improvement initiatives that you're engaged in at your school and how you meet and you collectively inquire together, and how might some of these research activities support your ongoing school improvement goals. And maybe drop something in the chat, or if you have a comment, feel free to unmute yourself and share.
We're going to say next year, in hindsight, maybe we could have sent a team or slowed the train down 1 year, but I think we're going to do some model shifting next year within our school to better allow for sort of this maximizing of our dual language model. That would be really helpful to make sure that we have some structures and systems in place around sort of that research-based program review, that maybe we can get into the particulars of our context, because I think everybody, anytime you're about to go through change, people like to know that it is the most contextualized research that you're making that decision on, because everyone feels that their context is supremely unique. So it's nice to be able to hold up a mirror and say, this is what the research says, this is how it connects to our environment. So it's not one particular thing there, but maybe a little synthesis of a lot of the things that I see there.
Thanks, Matt. And we hope that there's connections across. So the synthesis idea, yes, that these are not separate research activities, but they build on each other. And the idea that, you reinforced by designing the research practice partnership this way, we're not trying to add something new to school leaders and teachers' plates, but take something that's already there and help you to be able to do it with maybe some evidence, some confidence, and some efficacy. So we hope you will continue thinking about how these activities might support your school improvement goals. And we just want to finish with how your school can get involved. And there's a QR code there that will take you to the MLRC website. If you're not a member of the MLRC, we encourage you to join. Our membership year runs January through December. So if your school joins now, there's no charge because it's 2024 and there are only a few weeks left in the year, and then you can renew in January. So you get a chance to try it out for free if you're not a member. If you are a member, make sure you engage with the hub. Esther, what else can folks do?
So we have talked about the research symposium, and we'll mention that, but also there are a lot of opportunities to share about your work. So recently we were in the AMISA region at Tri Association, and some of the schools shared out about their action research. And so that was really exciting to be able to support them in sharing out with others about what they were doing in their school context. And we also love to support schools in writing about it. And while we want to emphasize that action research is by you and for you, we think, like Matt says, every school is convinced they're the only school that has these issues and they're a totally unique context and nothing applies to them. But we're pretty convinced that while each school is a unicorn, as John says, that there's a herd of unicorns, and we can help make those connections across and can learn from each other. So there really is an opportunity. And as John said, John was at AMISA LeadCon earlier this year, and I will be at AMISA TeachCon, including doing one of their pre-conference days, and it'll be focused on action research. So we hope that you join us, yes, as we unite the herded unicorns. So we're really excited about the various ways that you can engage together, both with MLRC and across the MLRC. As John said, we're about 200 schools, and over 30 of those schools are in the AMISA region, so lots of opportunities to connect. And one of the best ways to do so in person is going to be at our research symposium. So as John said earlier, it's not too late. I know some of you are joining us in Rome. Karina, who had to step out, is going to be there. Very excited about that. And we'll also be in the AMISA region in Argentina, and really looking forward to that in February. And that's a picture of our amazing Vietnam cohort who kicked us off a few weeks ago. So it's really an opportunity to come to the research symposium, dig into the research that does exist, and then have an opportunity to examine your unicorn context that we know is also important in thinking about what's an action research project we could implement at our own school that aligns with our current school improvement plans. And we will finish there. Just to again, thank you for joining us today. Might be the first time we've connected with some of you in this online space. So we're really grateful to AMISA for hosting and for the opportunity to be here. So thank you again. We look forward to connecting, and we've put some links in the chat for more information.
Thanks, Esther. And we have a few minutes. I know it's the start of a busy day for many of you, but we are happy to take questions. If there are any questions, you want to put them in the chat box, or you want to unmute yourself, or share about something that really resonated with you today.
Just a quick note of thanks to you both. Thank you for taking time, and especially such a crazy and hectic time of year. So nice to see you both.
Thanks for joining us, Vicki. We appreciate it. And to all of the AMISA Professional Learning Council, who we know puts together these amazing opportunities. We really appreciate it. So thanks again for having us. Thanks, Megan.
And thanks. Yeah, thanks for folks who, again, you took some time out of your busy day. We hope that this helped you connect the dots a little bit about who we are, what we do, and how action research is a really powerful connection for school improvement. Whether you join us at a research symposium, whether you do it independently, we would love to hear the kind of school-based research that you're engaged in. So please stay in touch with us, and we hope to meet up with you again soon. Thanks, Sarah, also for dropping so many useful links in the chat. Again, this will be recorded, and we'll share it out so you can share with colleagues at your school.
Thanks.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, Esther, for jumping in and sharing your slides. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.